Hello everyone, Republic Jim here, coming to you from my office today, and pardon me for all the background noise. We have a lot of computer fans running and it's a little loud in here, but hopefully the audio quality will be better here than it is when I'm driving in my Jeep. So anyway, with that said, as you can see from the title of the video, I want to encourage people to not get lazy. Now, just to be clear, I mean this in the context of preparedness. I mean, it's always a good idea to not be lazy anyway, but when it comes to being prepared for whatever may happen in life, laziness can definitely come back to bite you. Just a couple of examples I wanted to give that happened years ago, but really helped me to learn that lesson. One of them, at the time, my son was working and didn't have a car that was running, so we were trading off, carpooling. We had different work hours, so I would get home and hand off my car to him, and he would take it, and it was a really cold stretch in the winter. I got home from work. I was tired. I didn't feel like unloading my search and rescue pack and some other emergency gear to have it on hand. I figured it was supposed to be below zero that night. Nobody was going to be out doing anything silly, and I just didn't need it, and figured, well, leave it in the car. If my son needed it, then he could make use of it. But I just got home and kind of rationalized that way, because honestly, I just didn't feel like dealing with it at the time and in the cold weather and everything. And I just wanted to get in the house and relax and be warm. So I let it slide. And then a few hours later, got a call from search and rescue that somebody was missing, and they were considering sending a team out with snowmobiles and looking for this person at night. So by the time that I got that call, it was actually just about 10 degrees below zero, and that's Fahrenheit, not Celsius. It was extremely cold, and with the thought of going out at night into snowmobile trails up in the mountains, it was not anything that I was at all prepared to do without my SAR pack and other emergency gear. So fortunately at that point I had accumulated some gear so that was extra, besides my primary gear. I had some redundancy at home, but I had to scramble and gather it up, and it wasn't as good of quality or anything as my primary pack and setup. So, I scrambled to put together some gear just in case. Thankfully, didn't end up being needed on that mission, and so I was able to stay at home. But it really drove home the point to me that if it had been a serious emergency where my help was needed, I was not prepared. I didn't have any of the stuff that would have protected myself and others under those conditions. So that was kind of an eye-opener. Then one other example was in 2012, we had a county-wide straight-line windstorm, there's various names for it, microburst or whatever. People debate about what to call it. But at any rate, it went from the south end of the county up clear to the north end and just leveled all sorts of stuff, snapped off trees and power poles and everything. And, it took down power to the entire county. Some areas took quite a while to get it restored, as in, like up to a week or more. In town, it was restored sooner. But the point of that was that the truck I was driving at the time I had a habit of getting lazy about gassing up, and I would run it down until it was almost on fumes. And like, well, I don't really feel like going to get gas right now. I can wait. And that day at lunchtime, I knew it was on E. I thought about going at lunchtime and gassing up, but I procrastinated on it. Again, just didn't feel like dealing with it and put it off and figured I'll go gas up after work. Well, after work, that windstorm had hit and there was no power. At that point, there was only one gas station in town that had a generator, so the other stations were just shut down. They couldn't pump any gas. The one that had a generator had traffic backed up way down the road, taking forever for anybody to get any gas, and it just wasn't even practical at that point to try to get filled up. Fortunately, my son came into town and I rode home with him and just left the truck at work. There were some other issues going on at the time too. That fiasco with the windstorm was a whole story in itself. But the point I'm making on this is that if I hadn't been lazy, if I'd gone and gassed up at lunch, then that would not have been a problem. I would have had a full tank, and that particular issue at least wouldn't have been a worry during the whole aftermath of that disaster. So just a couple of examples. What I've found is there's all sorts of things in day-to-day life when it comes to being prepared that it's easy to just get lazy, get careless, let things slide. But it's really remarkable how statistically improbable it is that at that very moment where you get lazy, it seems to be that's when those disasters happen, or the emergency phone calls and such. It's really improbable how frequently things like that happen just at the point when you're not prepared. If you've put out that extra little bit of effort to be prepared, usually it seems like, well, that was a waste of effort because nothing happened. But you have to keep in mind that if something had happened and you weren't prepared, it could have been really bad. But because you keep from being lazy, because you stay motivated and have the discipline to take care of those things, you're ready if it does happen. The winter comes around, I'm try to make sure I always have a good supply of firewood in the house, and we have our emergency lights nearby. So anything happens, take the power out, we're still warm, we have light and such. And like when I end up driving over the mountain pass with my wife, we take her rig. It's real easy just to get careless and say, well, I'm not going to bother throwing my pack in there or my boots or whatever. But just think about the possibility of breaking down or getting stuck on the pass and having to walk in the snow or try to make a fire to stay warm or anything. I want to know that I have the appropriate gear there. Yes, my wife has her own emergency gear that she carries in the truck, but frankly, what I have in my SAR pack is a little better quality stuff, and it's more what I'm used to using, and I want to have my gear and know that I'm prepared for any kind of worst case scenario. So yeah, it's a pain to drag gear out of my rig, put it into hers, transfer stuff around. There's just various tasks like that that you have to go to the extra mile just to make sure that you're prepared. But if the worst case happens, it's well worth that effort. You really don't want to be in a situation where it does happen and you're going, wow, I wish I hadn't been so lazy. I wish I'd put out that extra effort just to be ready. So keep in mind there's all sorts of things in your daily life. Look at when you're traveling, or whether you're at home or work or any of those things, look at the possible scenarios that could happen. Try to plan accordingly and be prepared. And if there's things that you have to do to that extra mile to be ready when you're like going from one place to another or whatever, I certainly would encourage people to make that extra effort, make that part of your habit, where you're not given into that temptation to just take the easy way out and relax, but be mindful of that at all times. Is it especially enjoyable or relaxing? Not at all. But as part of a preparedness mindset, it's something that everybody should work at and just develop that regular habit. So that's about all I have on that topic. Hope it is useful to someone. This has been Republic Jim. I'll talk to you later.